Hi, I'm back in the sewing room today and I'll be making this album quilt block. I'll square it up to 12.5 inches when I'm finished, and it'll finish in your quilt at 12 inches square. And it's a simple but elegant quilt block, a classic block. And it's basically made out of squares that are on point, surrounded by setting triangles. So let's go to the design wall, take a close look at it, and I'll show you how to make it. You can see there's 4 squares on point out of your focus fabric, and then 1 additional square in the center out of the background fabric. And then surrounding the squares that are on point are the triangles. And there's 1 on each side, and then 1 on each corner. And these are commonly referred to as side setting triangles and corner setting triangles. From your focus fabric, cut 4 4 3/4 inch squares. From your background fabric, cut 1 7 1/4 inch square. That'll be for your side setting triangles. Cut 1 4 3/4 inch square. That's for your center background fabric. And then cut 2 4-inch squares, and these will be for your corner setting triangles. Now I'll subcut this 7 1/4 inch square into 4 triangles. And I'll move my cutting mat around. And now I'll subcut these 2 4-inch squares, and I'll just do 1 cut this time. And I'll just arrange these in their correct placement. And the corners. So what I like to do first is kind of take my corners and set them aside. And then I can see that I have a row here, here, and here. And so I'll start with the center, and it'll just be right sides together. And as usual, I'll put my pin in, indicating where I want to begin sewing and the direction I want to sew. And then I will do each of the top and the bottom. And what you want to do here is line up these right angles, because you're going to have a little bit of your point of your triangle sticking out. That's okay. So I'll line up the right angles, right sides together. And I want to sew from here to here. So I'll flip it over and put my pin in. This is just a rough pin at this point. Then I'll stack it up. And then I'll do the same thing here, match up my right angles. And pin. And that's all I can do for right now. I'll take it to the machine. I'll sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance down each of these seams. And I have my leader fabric, my 1/4 inch presser foot, remove my pin. And this particular block, I like to sew with a regular 1/4 inch seam allowance. On a lot of my blocks, I sew a scant 1/4 inch. But this one really comes out better with the regular 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I'll feed the next one right in. Okay, I'll just snip these apart. And then I'll put them back in their places. Okay, and then I'll just do the same exact thing. I'll pin the other pieces in place. Again, matching up right angles here. I'll take these over to the sewing machine, and off camera I'll do the same exact thing and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I have each of my rows sewn together and I put them back in their proper places, and now I'll press my seam allowances. And what I like to do with this particular block is press my top row to the right, my second to the left, and then my third to the right again. Alternately, you can, if you like, you can press toward the dark and that'll come out just fine, or you can press your seams open. I'll be pressing in alternate directions. I just find it's easier for me to match up my seams that way. Okay, I'll set my seam and then just give it a little finger press and press and set my seam. Finger press and press. So you can see on the back, both seams are going in the same direction. And then I'll just do my center opposite. Okay, and I'll do the third one off camera, and that way I'll just show you when I put these right sides together. One seam will be going to the left and one to the right, like so. So they're real easy for me to match up. Now that my 3 rows are sewn together, I will join these rows and right sides together. And you can either pin or use fabric glue. I think I'll use my fabric glue, and this is just a Sew Line glue stick, water soluble. And I'll just put a dab right here. And match it up. And then if you just give it a pinch, it'll stay right in place and that glue will hold together. And then I'll repeat that on this seam. And I'll meet you back at the sewing machine, a 1/4 inch seam allowance right along here. And as I come up to my seam here, I just make sure that my seam didn't get flipped around at all through there, and then just reline it up. You can use pins along here as well. It's probably a good idea. Check my seam. And then line up. And check my seams. They matched up. Looks good and looks good. So I'll take this over to the pressing area and give it a press. And then off camera, I will attach the third row in exactly the same manner. Now that my 3 rows are joined together, it's time to attach my corner setting triangles. And it's right sides together in your corner. And the important thing here is to get this point in the center of the square. So I'll show you 2 different ways to do that. The first way is to just fold your triangle in half and give it a crease. And then what you would do is fold the square in half, line up those edges, and crease. Then you would go right sides together and match up these 2 crease lines and pin. The other way I'll show you is right sides together, and you can use your ruler. And this block right here now measures 4 1/4 inches. So I'll just line up my ruler. So it's at 4 1/4 right here. And then I would simply make sure that my point right here is at the 1, 2, and 1/8 mark. And then pin. So either way, you just want to make sure that this point is in the center of this square right here. So I'll repeat that off camera with my 2 other corners. I have all my corners pinned. I'll take it to the machine. Again, a 1/4 inch seam allowance on each of my corner triangles. And I'll repeat that on the other 4 corners. What I like to do is use my square up ruler. This one's from Quilt in a Day. And then what I like to do, it has a 1/4 inch mark along 2 sides here. So what I do is line it up along the top and the side and make sure that I have a 1/4 inch right here at each of my points. So I just carefully line that up, and then I'll trim this side and this side. Okay, and then I'll flip it around and trim this side and this side. And I've just made sure that my 1/4 inch mark, my 1/4 inch line is here, right at my points on each of those 4 points. And you can see this block is a little bit oversized. That's why I don't like to use the scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, because you have plenty to trim off without it. There you have it, the album quilt block. Now the trickiest thing to this block is those corner triangles. And I find that I get the best results if I measure and line up the point with my ruler. So thank you for watching. I hope you give this block a try, and I'll see you next time.